There's no feeling quite like finding your perfect weapon to absolutely fry a boss. Yes, burn. Burn! Anyway, today I put together a list of the top 10 exotic heavy weapons every Destiny player needs. Some focus on clearing out mass amounts of enemies, while others, well, they help you melt bosses. Remember to leave a like if you find this video helpful, and if you like seeing build videos and other Destiny 2 helpful content, consider hitting that subscribe button. With that being said, let's jump right on into it. First up on our list is number 10, Thunderlord. This arc machine gun is a classic. With this weapon, you can hold down the trigger and it'll periodically increase its rate of fire. And on every 10th bullet or kill, it creates lightning strike. Though the catalyst is necessary for this weapon to even deal decent boss DPS, since with every lightning strike, your clip is refilled with 7 ammo. And this weapon made the list for one reason, its simplicity. Hold down the trigger and the machine gun go burr. Since it creates those lightning strikes, it's actually very strong when it comes to ad clearing, and it intrinsically can stun overload champions, making it a decent option for activities like solo lost sectors or nightfalls. Too many people think this weapon does a ton of DPS in bosses. In reality, there was a bug last year that was causing lightning strikes to hit twice when someone was using Divinity. Since that has been patched, there are plenty of other weapons out there that are just better options for dealing DPS to bosses. But when it comes to ease of use for a weapon, this is the most simple and easy to use for most players, which is why it made the list. It is a year 1 exotic without a quest, so the only way to get it is for a random drop chance from exotic engrams. However, there have been multiple times that Destiny's released this weapon as a free pickup to get new players into the game, so keep an eye out for those. Moving on to number 9, we have Xenophage. This solar machine gun is very unique. This weapon only holds 13 in its mag, but each round is a high damage explosive round. While this weapon, like most machine guns, isn't the best for boss DPS, it can be situationally very good. Like in the Deepstone Crypt raid, when you have to shoot those cooling tanks, this weapon excels at dealing damage to constructs or vehicles, since it fires an explosive round. There are other situations, like if you're running a solo dungeon, where this weapon can help wipe out targets quickly, like the Bellkeepers in the final boss encounter for Duality. Since this is for a PvE tier list, I have to mention the activity that shall not be named. Xenophage actually excels when taking out invading players, so you can focus on the real important parts of this PvE activity. I believe Destiny plans on giving us more constructs to have to deal damage to, so I think this weapon's usage will increase over time, which is why it made my list at number 9. There is a questline you can get by going to the Enduring Abyss on the moon that will eventually reward you with this weapon. There are plenty of guides out there on how to complete this quest, so go look up one of those if you plan on going after it. And number 8 on our list is an exotic solar sword called the Lament. This is a perfect example of what an exotic should be. It's a very unique weapon that is useful in the right scenario. It will heal you as you deal damage, but you can hold your block to rev up a blade, and while that blade is revved, you'll deal more damage. As far as I can tell, the best DPS method for this weapon is to hold the block button to start that revving, do 2 light attacks and then a heavy. Light attack until that energy is recharged and repeat the cycle. Since this weapon heals you, it can outperform other swords in certain scenarios, like the dungeon Pit of Heresy. There are situations where legendary swords can output more damage, but since this one heals you and deals very comparable damage, it can easily be used in any situation where a sword might be required. If swords were a better option for DPS, I would have this higher on my list, but since they're so risky and you can deal more DPS with other weapons, it only falls at number 8 for me. It's a very solid option to fall back on, so it's definitely worth having in your arsenal. There is a quest called the Lost Lament, which is available if you own the Beyond Light DLC, and it will reward you with this weapon when you complete it. Coming in at number 7, we have the Tractor Cannon, which is a void shotgun, and it's very unique. This weapon shoots a void blast that pushes enemies back, making them suppressed and weakened for 10 seconds. The weaken that you get from this is a 30% debuff, which is only shared with Tether Hunter and Felwinter's Helm for Warlocks. So this weapon is very much a utility weapon. With certain encounters like Golgoroth or bosses that need to be DPS with a sword, Tractor Cannon is fantastic. Being able to provide a 30% debuff for your team is massive, and the key is that the more players you have with you, the better this weapon will be, since everyone will benefit from that weaken. This can also be a great option for certain builds that revolve around using your abilities, like Strand Titan. When Festival of the Lost is here for Halloween, I loved bringing the Strand Titan with Tractor Cannon to mow through those mini bosses that spawn. This weapon can lead to you being a very valuable player for your team, especially for early game players that might not have the best legendary DPS weapons. To get it, go to Shahan in the Cosmodrome. He should have a key called Maeve's Key that will open a chest, and it straight up gives you Tractor Cannon. So most players should have this weapon. The catalyst isn't absolutely necessary, but it does give you more reserve, so why not get it? And coming in at number 6, we have the Winter Bite. This stasis glaive is unmatched. When you fire it, it shoots out a slow moving orb that will shoot freezing projectiles towards enemies within its range and explode on impact. If you also keep at least one round in the mag, the glaive melee attacks deal 50% more damage, and it applies 40 stacks of slow, which will eventually freeze and shatter a target. This is a very niche but very powerful weapon, and it takes some getting used to. The sheer freezing potential makes this fantastic for game modes like Onslaught, allowing you to obliterate everything in your path. Since you can also deal massive damage and shatter targets with the glaive melee, it can be used on certain glaive builds like the Worm God Caress and Banner of War Titan or Behemoth Titan for extra shatter damage. With the stacking glaive melee damage up to 200%, you can melt through enemies without having to use any ammo. Plus, if you get in a sticky situation, you can block with it to gain a 95% damage resistance. It's a ton of fun to use and can be very powerful, which is why it landed at my number 6 spot. Winterbite is rewarded for completing the Strider quest after finishing the Lightfall campaign. And at number 5, we have the Parasite, which is a solar grenade launcher that shoots out a deadly hive worm that can lead to some massive burst damage. With this weapon, you can get kills to work up stacks of Worm's Hunger, and when at 20 stacks, you'll deal a maximum of 200% increased damage. This is some of the highest burst damage in the game, which is why it's used for certain scenarios like Atrax from Deep Stone Crypt, which has a damage window of about a second or two. I think people forget how strong this weapon is. Many people just have a heavy so they can deal good sustained DPS, but since this weapon can deal massive burst DPS, when it comes to any activity with mini bosses, you become a walking nuke ready to explode. If you have enemies to kill around you, all you have to do is get a few kills and shoot another grenade. Many activities outside of raids have a ton of enemies spawning with you while you're trying to deal damage to bosses, so you can shoot that nuke at a boss, then mop up some of the ads to help with survival, all while working up stacks of Worm's Hunger. Plus, this weapon annihilates champs, so it's fantastic for getting to the boss room in the first place. This weapon can be rewarded from the Queen of Worms quest after completing the Witch Queen campaign. And at my number 4 spot, we have Leviathan's Breath, which is a void bow that hits like a tank. Fully drawn shots will create a concussive blast, which can stun mini bosses, and perfectly drawn shots will apply volatile. Unfortunately, this weapon is almost useless without its catalyst. With the catalyst, you get 33% more arrows, and you get Archer's Tempo to decrease the draw time by almost half whenever you hit a crit. With the catalyst, this weapon provides the user with massive damage potential, decent DPS, ways to stun enemies, and the intrinsic ability to stun unstoppable champions. Bringing this bow into long-range engagements or activities with champions is always a good idea. I've run many Nightfalls where this bow has one-shot unstoppable champions or left them with a sliver of health. Being able to stun some bosses and mini-bosses means that you can more comfortably take out enemies like Tormentors or potentially some of those new Dread enemies that we'll face in the final shape. I highly recommend getting this weapon and its catalyst if you don't have it already. You can purchase this exotic from the kiosk in the tower for 100,000 Glimmer, 150 legendary shards, and 1 Ascendant shard. The catalyst is a random drop when completing ritual activities like Crucible and Vanguard Ops, so good luck getting it. And landing at number 3 is the infamous Gjallarhorn. This solar rocket launcher is one of the most used weapons in the game. I truly believe every Guardian should have it and its catalyst. Technically, you don't need the catalyst for its main purpose, but it will add an extra round to the mag to help with your DPS. The main purpose of this weapon is to buff your teammates' rockets. Rocket launchers have been one of the best DPS methods for a long time now. They aren't quite what they used to be, but they're still the best DPS method in most situations. If you own the Gjallarhorn, it means that if you don't have time to grind for the most recent god roll of the newest, shiniest, legendary rocket, you can always whip out the Galley and provide your teammates with the much needed damage buff. Without Galley, rockets deal significantly less damage. So if your team plans on using rockets to burst down a boss, you'll need someone to be using this exotic. This rocket launcher does shoot out a rocket that releases homing cluster missiles on impact, so it can be pretty decent for ad clearing. In terms of raw damage, it's not the best, but without this weapon, rockets would need a decent buff to be able to compete in the current sandbox, which is why Galley landed at my number 3 spot on this list. This exotic is rewarded for completing the quest called And Outfly the Wolves from the 30th anniversary pack. And coming in at my number 2 spot is Whisper of the Worm. This solar sniper used to be one of the best DPS methods back in the day. Now that it has a craftable version, it's returned to its former glory. With 3 shots in the mag, if you land 3 precision hits within a short amount of time, you'll generate 1 ammo from thin air and pull 2 from your reserves, refilling its 3 rounds in its mag. This also has a catalyst called Whispered Breathing, where when you ADS for roughly just over a second, it increases your precision multiplier by 35% and gives you about 11% more damage. This buff lasts until you are no longer ADSing, so it's worth it to wait that extra second for the increased damage, because with Whisper, for most damage phases that you'd use it, you should never have to reload, meaning that you'll have that increased damage buff the entire time. This sniper excels in long range damage phases, or bosses that don't move around a ton. Bosses like Oryx and War Priest from King's Fall are good examples of when to use this weapon. While this weapon doesn't have high burst damage, it does have high sustained damage and decent DPS. While running Pantheon the last few weeks, it's been a blessing having a craftable version of Whisper that absolutely cooks Oryx. With Into the Light, we got a reworked version of its old exotic mission. When you complete the quest Whisper of the Past, you can earn a craftable version of this weapon and its catalyst. Most people run field prep for the extra base reserves, but if you plan on rallying to a flag with triple reserves, no distractions might actually be a better option for the 35% reduced flinch, since with field prep and without it, if you have 3 reserve mods, you'll always have 30 rounds. And before we get to our number 1 spot, I do have some honorable mentions. Salvation's Grip is a stasis grenade launcher that is so unique and so fun to use that I had to include it. By holding down the trigger, you can fire and release a shot that creates 6 stasis crystals in a V shape. Crystals are the basis for most stasis builds, so this is so much fun to use on a stasis build like Behemoth Titan. Most players won't be able to use it effectively for damage rotations, so this is more of just a fun option to use. We also have Sleeper Stimulant, which is a solar linear fusion rifle. Right now, it's slightly worse than Whisper of the Worm, which is why I couldn't put it on the list when we have the craftable version of Whisper. It also is only good if you have the catalyst, so if you don't have Whisper and you have the catalyst for Sleeper, then it is a good pick. Two-Tailed Fox is a rocket launcher that fires 2 rockets, 1 void and 1 solar, but you really need the catalyst for it to be good, since with the catalyst it becomes Three-Tailed Fox, firing an additional arc rocket. Without the catalyst it's bad, but with the catalyst it's a decent option for dealing decent DPS and adding in Jolt and Scorch for extra damage. Its main use case is in activities with champions, since it stuns overload champions and will deal a ton of damage to mini bosses. We also have Grand Overture, which is an arc machine gun that is very niche but a very powerful weapon. With hits on targets, you build up stacks of missile volley, which can stack up to 20 rockets. This volley is one of the highest burst DPS options around, meaning you can stack up to 20 rockets before a damage phase and deal a ton of burst damage. But since it becomes weaker as DPS goes on, it doesn't have good long-term DPS, making it a niche option that can only be situationally good. And finally, coming in at number 1 is Dragon's Breath. This solar rocket launcher is the best heavy weapon for solo players and can be very good when dealing boss DPS with a team. The thing that makes this weapon so unique and so powerful is that over time it builds up stacks of fuel, and at 5 stacks, it not only reloads itself, but it also deals a ton more damage. Depending on how much fuel a rocket has when you fire it, it embeds itself wherever it lands and sprays out pools of fire that deal damage and apply a ton of scorch, leading to a ton of ignitions. These ignitions deal massive damage, but can also stun bosses like the Ogre from Warlord's Ruin, so that they basically can't move or shoot you. Not to mention, it also creates fire sprites, so it makes it a little bit easier to get back your grenade for either extra damage or extra healing from something like Healing Grenade. The beautiful thing about this weapon is that while the rocket is dealing damage and your weapon is refueling itself, you can deal damage with another weapon to double dip on damage. There's only 2 things wrong with this rocket launcher. First, it gets significantly worse the more people that are using it. So if you're in a team, there should really only be 1 person running this weapon. And second, if you get too close to where the rocket is embedded or the boss runs over to you, you can easily die by your own hands. Since it is so good when only 1 person is running it, this is the perfect weapon for solo players to deal a ton of damage in a short period of time. Right now, you can get it from the season pass, but once the final shape is here, this weapon should move to the kiosk in the tower where you can buy it straight out. With the final shape right around the corner, now is the time to go and get these weapons. Set yourself up for success with everything from ad clearing machines to the best weapons for watching bosses burn. If you found this video helpful or just enjoyed seeing a new perspective, feel free to like the video and comment down below which exotic heavy weapon is your favorite and why. Keep an eye out for future videos as we continue to explore the ever-evolving world of Destiny 2. Until then, may the threads of fate be ever in your favor. This is Lucky Mech signing off. See you on the next adventure, Guardians.